Hey, everybody. Welcome to Snack Size DFS. I'm Dan Bespris, just here to introduce the program. The great Brenton Eckersley will be with you in about 45 seconds to break down the Monday medium size, actually lately kind of a large size DFS slate, and rack up a few more winners. A quick reminder before we get started to like the show, subscribe to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, because we're going to have these DFS shows intermittently throughout the rest of the season, and we might even be adding more stuff on that side of the equation. So this is not going to be a 1 or 2 time thing. This is a long-term project and something that we really take very seriously. Follow Brenton at Terrain72. He'll tell you more about where you can find himself. And also, of course, always check out our buddies at Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and the number one source for online betting. They've got football, NBA, college hoops, NHL, UFC, in-game live betting, early odds, and the ability to watch the games as they happen. And when you go there, use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to get a welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online. The game starts here. Brenton, take it away.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Snack Size DFS. I'm your host Brenton Eckersley, coming to you from South Australia. This is part of the Old Man Squad network. Thank you Dan Bespris for the intro. As always, we are looking at your DraftKings January 6th, that's a Monday, 8-game card. There are actually 9 games on today, but only 8 in the main DK slate. So we're going to crack in very quickly. This should be short, sharp and shiny today. We're going to just focus in on some names here that have grabbed my interest at their particular pricing. And for the first time ever, I have a game that I have zero interest in whatsoever, so that one's coming up. Let's jump in. 8 games, as I said, on the DK slate, Monday, January the 6th. Here are your game notes. Snack Size DFS, here we go. A couple of fast games here to look at. We don't have all the game totals at the time of me recording this. San Antonio at Chicago, that's a 236 game total, and Milwaukee at Toronto. No game total yet. I would expect that to be pretty quick. Clippers at Minnesota, that's a very slow game, 214 game total, one to potentially avoid, and Orlando at New York, no game total yet, but again, I expect that one to be fairly slow. We do have some interesting names in that game to look at though. Attack and stack, this is where we can attack teams that give up fantasy points on the regular. Detroit playing Portland. Portland just give up fantasy points all over the place, although in the last week or so they have been a little bit better. Milwaukee at Toronto. San Antonio versus Chicago, that should be a fast game as well. And also Dallas taking on Memphis, who are sliding into consideration for giving up fantasy points with all of the players that they have out. Let's jump into the first game, the Blazers versus the Pistons. With Jeremy Grant currently out, I really like Denny Avdia at 6,600. 48 and 40 DK points are his last 2. We can definitely play Denny here. Anthony Simons at 6,400. Not my favourite play of the slate, but again, Grant is out. The shots have to go somewhere. 38 and 44 DK points in his last 2. That's not a bad price for Anthony Simons. And Tamani Kamara, 4,700, is probably more of a cash play just with Grant out. On the Detroit side of things, Malik Beasley, 5,600. Look, we know that there's no Jaden Ivey for a long, long time now. The poor guy breaks his leg on court. That was just a horrific injury to see. So Malik Beasley is going to swallow up a whole lot of usage here. Couple of extra minutes maybe as well. 5,600, too easy. He came off 35 in the last one, and he has 40 to 45 DK point upside now. Cade Cunningham at 9,700. I love this price versus the Trailblazers, especially at the point guard position. That's a price drop as well. Cade's one of my favourite plays today. Jalen Duren, 6K. Yep, that's a price drop as well. And of course, Portland centres are the very easy place to attack when teams play against the Blazers. Asar Thompson, we saw him start in the last one. I'd like to see that he is starting again, and we should get that game news. 4,600 is a great price. He's coming off of 38 DK points with Ivy out. Whole lot of extra minutes. He's not going to shoot 100% every single night, but we know the defensive stats upside are there. Ivy's no longer there, so Asar Thompson if he starts. Moving on to Phoenix versus Philadelphia here. No real interest in the bigger name guys except for Yusuf Nurkic here. 5,800. He's going to be needed versus Embiid if Embiid plays, and if Embiid doesn't play, then Nurkic is still in a great spot. Grayson Allen and Ryan Dunn are really just tournament plays here. O'Neal is out. Both of them are pretty well priced and can put up 30 to 35 on their day. Probably leaning towards Grayson Allen there. On the Philly side of the ball, Embiid is questionable. Surprise, surprise, 9,600. He is topping out 50 DK points and or above in his last four. 9,600 is not an issue to play versus Phoenix if he does take the court. If Embiid is out, then we like Maxey and Paul George for the usage bumps. 8,600 and 7,100, depending on how many dollars you have to spend at what particular position might dictate on who you play there. If Embiid sits, I don't mind either of those guys. And some of the lower price guys that you can look at if Embiid sits, Caleb Martin at 4,800. Sorry, that one is actually an Oubre injury replacement. Oubre is questionable at the moment, my apologies. So you can look at Caleb Martin to get some more minutes if Oubre is out at 4,800. And Andre Drummond is an obvious injury replacement if Embiid sits. Indiana versus Brooklyn. Brooklyn should get a decent pace bump here. On the Indiana side of the ball, almost zero interest in some of the high price guys. They're all just priced appropriately for me. Spit it out, Brenton. The two guys in the mid-range that I did have a little bit of a look at were Benedict Mathurin at 5,800. 30 plus minutes in his last four games. That's what we need to see from Mathurin before we're going to play him. 5,800, he's more of a cash play. Miles Turner versus at 6,400. I like targeting Brooklyn centers, so that is not a bad play. He's not doing a great amount at the moment, kind of hovering around value here, but anything is possible versus Brooklyn centers at the moment. For Brooklyn themselves, Ben Simmons is 5,900 and D'Angelo Russell, apologies for the spelling mistake there, 5,500. Look, they're vice versa plays for me, basically. Injury replacements if the other one, or not injury replacements, but usage bump replacements if the other one can't go. So if Russell can't go, you can play Ben Simmons at 5,900. If Simmons can't go, you can play D'Angelo Russell at 5,500. If both of them can't go, then we love Keon Johnson at 5,300. Someone's going to have to handle the ball. He's going to get a whole lot more shots. If both of those guys can't play, then 5,300 for Keon Johnson is a great price. And also just mention Noah Clowney here. We have to keep mentioning him. There's a whole lot of guys out on this team. Cam Johnson's not there either. Look, it's just a usage thing. He's been very disappointing, Noah Clowney, in his minutes that he has been getting, but 4,900 and also versus Indiana power forwards is another spot you can attack. Then Noah Clowney is still in play. At some point, this guy's got to do something, doesn't he? Hopefully. Moving on to the next game, this should be a pretty fast game. The Bucks versus the Raptors. It's only the top of the line for Milwaukee that I'm looking here price-wise. Giannis at 11.3. He should decimate the Raptors. 11.3 is certainly a high price, but he is, again, another one of my favourite plays on this card. Dame at 8,700. His shooting has been way off again. He's been a bit of a yo-yo this season. Can he find his shot? Let's hope he can, and then 8,700 is a breeze. He is shooting below 33% on his last three games, so if he can get that up a little bit from the floor in terms of field goal percentage, then 8,700 shouldn't be a problem versus the hapless Raptors. Scotty Barnes at 9,500. RJ Barrett is questionable at the moment, so I only like this price if Barrett sits. Emmanuel Quickly, though, at 7K, I'd really like this price, and I'd really like it if Barrett sits as well, plus we can target Milwaukee point guards. Grady Dick 5,400. That's only if RJ Barrett sits, and the other guy if Barrett sits is Oshae Agbaji. Moving on to Orlando versus New York. This is a slow game. We can expect the scoring and game total to be fairly down here, but there's still some interesting guys. Goga Bitadze, I still like playing Goga at 7,300. As I said, it isn't the greatest matchup in terms of pace, but he's still in play every time he hits the court at 7,300. He does have 40 to 45 point DK upside. I like it even more if Cat sits on the other side of the ball. Cole Anthony, 4,900. Look, the Magic are on a back-to-back. They basically played just before I started recording this. 4,900 for Cole Anthony. That shouldn't be a problem. He didn't really get it done today, but he did the game before, and we know that Suggs is out already, so it's not great. He's still got 28 minutes. 4,900. I still like that price for Cole Anthony. The other guys you can look at with Suggs out, Trevelyan Queen, 4,100. Jet Howard had a blinder today around about 31 DK points off the top of my head. And just a note that those two guys did put up points today, but it was versus Utah, and that is not New York, so play with caution. On the New York side of things, we know that Cat is questionable, had a bit of a leg injury in the last couple of minutes in his last game. He is questionable, so if he doesn't sit, just lock in Precious Achiuwa at 4,500, and I also like Jalen Brunson at 9K if Cat sits. San Antonio at Chicago. This is a quick game, we hope. Wemby at 11-1. This is a pace-up game for San Antonio. Chicago play very fast, so we hope that we can extract a lot of value out from here from Wemby at 11,100. Pace up, as I said, fantasy points versus Chicago, maybe the best play of the night in terms of the high price guys. Harrison Barnes doesn't show up on my notes very often, but at 4K, he's a tournament dart throw versus Chicago, who give away fantasy points for free, and also you can attack them on the wings. So therefore, Devin Vassell at 6,100, he is a cash play. Hasn't really been reaching upside scores lately, but he's a cash play versus Chicago, targeting the wings as well. On the Chicago side of the ball, I love Vucevic here at 8,800. The price is up, but he did drop 58 DK points versus San Antonio last time out. So not a bad price for Vucevic. Kobe White, 6,900. Who knows which version we get. He is the definition of a yo-yo at the moment. Desulnu is still out. We should get 40 DK points when that happens. But it's been bouncing between 20, 40, 35, 20. It's all over the place. Tournament play only for Kobe White if you need that value, that $6,900 price tag to slot in. Josh Giddey, though, 7,700. I really like this price for Josh Giddey. 65.40. He had a down one with 18 DK points, but then bounced back to 45 DK points. That's an easy play for Josh Giddey at 7,700. Moving on to Dallas versus the Grizzlies. We know there's no Luka, there's no Kyrie. You would think that Spencer Dinwiddie should be getting things done. He's just not. We're not seeing a huge amount of minutes going into Dinwiddie. I think his last two were mid-20s only, which is kind of bizarre with those two high name players out. Low minutes, low scores in the last few, but it's Spencer Dinwiddie. He can go off at any time. He should be exceeding this value at 6,500. Play him at your peril, but he's still in play. PJ Washington at 6,500, another guy who should be just soaking up usage with the big names out. He's been down a little bit as well, but we have seen him cook with both Kyrie and Luka out recently. Quentin Grimes is the guy getting it done at 5,500 if you like that play. He's probably more of a cash play for me. He doesn't have that upside that maybe the other two guys do, but we know that Luka and Kyrie are out. He's coming off 30 and 39. The other guys in the mix with those big names out, Jaden Hardy at 4,500. It's just one guy. Jaden Hardy, 4,500. He had 25 minutes in the last game and put up 27 DK points. That is a dart throw tournament play. For Memphis, just completely beat up. They have players out everywhere. Surprisingly, though, the pricing is fairly appropriate for the guys who remain. The two guys I do like, Jake LaRavia at 5K. We now have Desmond Bane doubtful as well. So in the last one, LaRavia had 32 minutes and put up 37 DK points. Zach Edey, 5,400, kind of always in play at that price. Bit of a roller coaster though, so a tournament play only. And also with Desmond Bane doubtful, we can look at Jalen Wells for 5,300. I probably prefer LaRavia. The last game of the day, this is one where I mentioned I went through every player, clicked on every name, trying to find some value here, but it's a slow game. I don't see much going on here. There's no real injury replacements, so we are just going to pass, or I am just going to pass on the Clippers and Wolves game. That brings us to the end of today's show. Favourite plays from me, it's Avdia versus Detroit, Beasley versus Portland, Cade versus Portland, and then we have the trio of Maxey, Paul George, and Andre Drummond versus Phoenix if Embiid sits. Keon Johnson versus Indiana is a great play if we see that both Simmons and Russell sit. Giannis versus the Raptors should eat. Achua versus Orlando if Cat sits. Wemby versus Chicago, great spot for Wemby here. And Josh Giddey versus San Antonio. That's the end of the show, guys. Thank you for joining me. As always, please like and subscribe. Please drop the comments in the YouTube video down below. And also you can find me on Twitter at Terrain72 and on Blue Sky at Terrain72.bsky.social. That's it for today. We'll see you in a few days. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Brenton. Amazing work as always. He just keeps gussying up his show with new stuff these days. I like that. We're going from no tech to low tech here at Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. That's how I roll. So I actually have a t-shirt with a toilet paper on it that says that's how I roll. I probably should have been wearing that for this particular moment. Take a second to pre-like. What's a pre-like? It's a show that hasn't happened yet, but it's posted because it's going to be a live show February the 6th, the NBA trade deadline live show right here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Please go pre-like that show. The link is in the show description. It's also one of the featured shows on our YouTube page. That's a great place to do it. It helps us grow the website super duper fast because when the show drops on that February 6th morning, everybody will see it because everybody that's pre-liked it, subscribe, whatever, it's just more people that are getting alerted that this thing is happening. And we're just going to be rolling through. Myself, Adam King, amazing analyst from across the fantasy space, breaking down every trade that happens on trade deadline morning. So like that show, like this show, subscribe. That's obviously the big one. Drop a review if you're listening after the fact. Thank you once again to Brenton for his incredible work here on the DFS side at Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Have an amazing Monday, everybody. Make sure to stay tuned for my show, Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, the full season edition. That'll be dropping here in the next couple of hours. Until then, so long.